3 monster hurricanes in a single month. Harvey, Irma, Maria.
It is the night of October 29th, 2012. Fire Chief Marty Ingram is pushing through chest-deep floodwater in the Breezy Point section of Queens, fighting his way toward a fire. Not a burning house, a burning neighborhood. And the same neighborhood is drowning at the same time.
Houston, the nation's 4th largest city, is underwater.
Behind him, the Atlantic keeps rising. In front of him, the sky over Queens burns orange. What these men are about to see, no one in this city has ever witnessed.
Islands like Puerto Rico and nations of the Caribbean are ravaged.
Earlier that month, New York is calm and almost entirely unaware of what is brewing offshore. Across Brooklyn, paper skeletons and pumpkins still hang from the front stoops. Beneath Manhattan, the trains keep up the same low rumble they have made for more than a century. For most of the city's 8.3 million residents, hurricanes are something that belongs to other places.
The Florida Keys are in shambles.
The Gulf, the Carolina coast, anywhere but here. The people watching it most closely are nowhere near New York. At the National Hurricane Center, forecasters have spent days tracking a system in the far Atlantic that unsettles them more by the hour. Around October 22nd, a weak tropical depression knots together over the Western Caribbean. Within a day, it has earned a name. Sandy, 2 days on. By the 24th, it has matured into a Category 1 hurricane ripping across Jamaica at 80 miles an hour. From there, it climbs over Cuba, loses some of its bite over land, then slides back onto warm open water and pulls itself together again. Near its strongest, it briefly touches Category 3, with winds close to 115 miles an hour. But none of that is what sets Sandy apart from every storm in living memory. That part is still coming. Far above the continent, a deep trough in the jet stream, a plunge of frigid polar air diving south, drops into exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. On an ordinary track, that jet stream would have flicked the hurricane harmlessly back out into open ocean. Instead, it slams shut like a gate and bends Sandy inland, lining it up on the northeastern United States. Then a second ingredient stacks on top. As the warm tropical core runs into the cold continental air, it goes through what meteorologists call extratropical transition. Rather than fizzling out, Sandy remakes itself. The compact, tidy eye of a textbook hurricane unravels, and the storm bloats outward, its strongest winds reaching something like 500 miles from the middle. It grows so big and so unusual that forecasters reach for a label they hardly ever use: a superstorm. And the water it shoves ahead of itself, the surge, starts getting described in words New York was not used to hearing aimed at New York. Catastrophic, historic, unsurvivable. This is a city perched barely above the waterline, tunneled through underneath, and wrapped by harbor on 3 sides, and the size of what is closing in is almost too much to picture. Mayor Michael Bloomberg orders more than 375,000 people out of the lowest lying zones. Transit officials take the rare step of powering down the whole subway, a network more than 100 years old, and the buses and commuter trains along with it. Decisions like these would go on to spare an enormous number of lives. Plenty of people, though, did not listen. The morning of the 29th breaks gray and strangely quiet. To the New Yorkers who chose to stay, the whole thing still feels half imaginary, a story on the television rather than a threat at the door. Out along the open Staten Island shoreline, in places like Midland Beach and Oakwood Beach, people crack their doors to check. A bit of water gathering in the streets, sure, but they had seen that much in the past. What none of them could see was the part that counted, what the harbor itself was doing. Down in lower New York Bay, the sea had been quietly mounting for hours. Driven northward by that enormous wind field, the Atlantic was being forced straight into the funnel of New York Harbor. The deeper it pressed, from the open sea into the tightening channels of the inner harbor, the less room it had, and the only way left for all of it was up. By the back half of the afternoon, the water level logged at the foot of Manhattan is rising fast enough to scare the people reading the gauge. Before the evening is even out, that level has already beaten the old record for the site, and the storm has yet to actually come ashore. Something enormous is bearing down. The only open question is when. At roughly 7:30 that evening on the 29th, Sandy crosses the New Jersey coast near Brigantine. Technically, it is a post-tropical cyclone by now, but it is still throwing sustained winds of about 80 miles an hour. The precise instant of landfall barely counts anymore. The storm had been clawing at the coastline for hours, and the real weapon, the surge, is already flooding into New York. At 9:24 that night, the battery gauge peaks at a little over 14 feet above the low water mark. That sits more than 4 feet past anything in over 90 years of records at the spot. And across the low ground of Staten Island, Queens, and Brooklyn, the ocean is no longer just rising against walls. It is taking whole blocks. Staten Island has always been the overlooked corner of the city, jutting out at the harbor's edge, fenced off from everywhere else by the very water now turning against it. Sandy's surge doesn't so much arrive as collide, a solid moving wall of sea. When the tally is finally done, over 20 of the city's deaths will come from this borough alone. But a number on a page can't carry what that night actually was. Along the south and east shores, the ocean doesn't spill over the curb, it bursts through it. People who had stayed behind stand at their windows and watch a few inches turn into a ramming current inside of minutes. And still it keeps climbing. In Tottenville, at the island's far southern tip, 55-year-old George Dresch and his 13-year-old daughter, Angela, had chosen to stay.
A superstorm.
It really was the worst that nature delivers in storms.
They all just exploded from the wind like a bomb went off.
A year earlier, when the family evacuated for Hurricane Irene, their home was burglarized while they were gone, and they did not want to leave it empty again. The surge tore the house clean off its foundation. Neither father nor daughter survived the night. George's wife, Patricia, was found alive in the wreckage, but badly hurt. A short distance away in Oakwood Beach, a mail carrier named Leonard Montalto made sure his daughter got out, then stayed behind himself to mind the pump in his basement. By the next morning, rescuers found his body down there. He was one of many who would not give up a home, and were caught by a flood almost nobody had believed could reach them. Roughly 10 miles east, the Breezy Point part of Queens is collapsing into a disaster of a wholly different kind, the one that would leave behind the night's most impossible images. Breezy Point clings to a slim finger of land at the southwest end of the borough. Water crowding it on 3 sides, its houses jammed close together. The flooding sweeps in nearly as quickly as it had on Staten Island. But the flooding is not the danger here. Somewhere near the oceanfront, in the thick of all that water, an electrical fire catches. On any normal night, the fire department snuffs it out in minutes. Tonight, no engine can reach it through the submerged streets. Crews arrive on foot and in boats, slogging through chest-high water and brutal wind. And the fire refuses to be contained. It leaps, then leaps again. Crammed wall to wall along the tight lanes, the wooden bungalows ignite like kindling, the wind hurling flame from one roof to the next. From any distance, it makes no sense at all, a place on fire and underwater in the same frame. By the time it is finally checked, well over 100 houses are simply gone, burned down to bare, scorched slabs stretching block after block, ground that looks more like a bombed-out battlefield than a place anyone lived. Through all of this, the surge is accomplishing something engineers had long written off as nearly impossible. It is flooding the subway. Salt water pours down vent grates and stair entrances throughout lower Manhattan. The aging river tubes linking Brooklyn and Manhattan, bored out across generations and ridden by millions for over 100 years, brim up like giant bathtubs. The Montague Street Tube, the Hugh Carey Tunnel, the Cranberry Street Tube. Every one of them swamped. Reversing that damage to a century of cabling and signals would eat up months and a sum north of $1 billion. At very nearly the same instant on 14th Street, a Con Edison substation detonates when floodwater meets its high-voltage gear. A flare of blue-white light splits the skyline, seen clear across the water in New Jersey and Brooklyn. And just like that, everything below 34th Street drops into black. By the time it is over, something like 8 million customers across 17 states have lost power, the worst blackout the Northeast had ever lived through. At New Langone Medical Center, the floodwater kills the building's emergency generators. More than 200 patients are inside, among them newborns in the neonatal intensive care unit, and every one of them now has to be carried out into the heart of the storm. Staff move infants down lightless stairwells, a few from as high as the 17th floor, hands squeezing oxygen into the smallest of them the whole way down. Improbably, every patient gets out. Not a single person dies in the evacuation. When daylight returns on the 30th, the storm itself is long gone, though its handprint is everywhere. In New York City, the dead are counted in the dozens. Nationwide, 117 deaths would eventually be tied to Sandy. The damage across the country pushes past $65 billion, which at the time ranks it as the second most expensive natural disaster in the country's history, behind only Hurricane Katrina. The trains stay down for days, then crawl back in fragments, some lines lifeless for months. On Staten Island, the worst hit blocks end up waiting far longer for help and drawing far less attention than parts of Manhattan or Brooklyn. People there speak of feeling abandoned by the city they belong to. That imbalance, who got pulled out quickly and who was left to wait, becomes one of the storm's most bitter legacies. Breezy Point claws its way back the slow, stubborn way. Fresh houses rise on the old lots, but for years you can still read the bare outlines of the 100-plus homes that burned. A quiet map of the night a neighborhood caught fire as it went under. In the years afterward, the city rethinks its entire relationship with the sea at its door. New flood maps are drawn. Billions of dollars are aimed at coastal defenses. In some places, including a good deal of Oakwood Beach, the state simply buys the houses out and gives the land back to the marsh. A quiet admission that the water had reclaimed that ground and would come for it again. But some losses no barrier and no buyout can reach. Near Midland Beach, a small memorial now stands close to where the flood swallowed Glenda Moore's car and where the current tore her 2 little boys out of her arms. Beside it, someone planted a pair of saplings, one for each child. For a single night, the ocean climbed up into New York and took whatever it could touch, and it left a wound no wall along the coast will ever fully heal. Every storm passes in time. What stays behind is the way people reached for each other in the dark. So look after one another. If you stayed with this the whole way through, then stories like this clearly mean something to you. A quick like and a subscribe genuinely help, They push the video toward more people and keep documentaries like this one getting made. Stay safe out there, and we will see you in the next one.